All right. So I think this is an interesting distinction. I've been reading John Michael Greer's book, The Long Descent. Now, this was written in 2008. So I try to put it in context. It's somewhat lefty, somewhat kind of dabbing a little bit on far right wing folks in particular. He was talking a little bit of shit about Spangler, saying, well, what Spangler wrote about was wrong, this and that. And he's somewhat lefty in his views, but he's described himself as a Burkean conservative. When I get Dark Age America, I can go ahead and kind of dissect this more. But I think that, like I said, feel as you want to about John Michael Greer, but I think, if nothing else, he's a very sobering writer. I think that he's someone that's very clear and concise in his writing. He's not very complicated. I think that if you have any bit of intelligence and have studied, and he can even lay it out for you, whether it's Hubbard's peak oil theory or talking about, for example, he's talking about like the like the way societies may work with monasteries and how they saved a lot of knowledge, and ultimately how a lot of folks a lot of monks and whatnot lived in more poverty than ordinary peasants did because they felt that it was important to save knowledge. But I digress. You see by the title the use of the phrase of, do you use the term Nazi or Nazism, or do you use the phrase National Socialism, Nationalsozialist, or Nationalsozialismus? And so I think it's a very important distinction. This even goes back to Goebbels' writing of Nazi Sozi, which are you know basically Nationalsozialist or Nationalsozialismus versus Socialismus, and it's a very important distinction because when I saw that John Michael Greer, sometimes he used Nazism, sometimes he used National Socialism. And it's something that I think a lot of people, like I said, I mean, we can delve into like the anti-Semitic sort of rhetoric of, oh well, they invented the word Nazi, or you can go into like Ashka Nazi, right? But that's a whole, like I say, that's a deeper rabbit hole than I think I could explain. It's important to realize the use of words and the use of these things. Like I say, and they'll say, oh well, this guy's a Nazi or this and that, or National Socialism. Of course, then you'll get people who say social nationalism. Like I say, I mean, people think it's clever, but yeah. And it's an important distinction to realize. It's almost like, have you been propagandized or not? That's why people say National Socialism, you know, of people who are a little bit more understanding, you know. Now, of course, National Socialism, as it was in real life, had failings. You can go into the anti-Semitic views of it, but the Strength Through Joy program fell out of favor once war came about. There were plans to have, all German citizens to have a VW Beetle. Feel as you want to about that vehicle, but the plans were there, and the idea of the resorts on the Baltic Sea. Of course, I think I talked about it in a live stream once, but they actually updated those to make them luxury condos for people that live in Berlin and stuff like that. So like I say, nothing ever really goes away necessarily; it just kind of comes back in vogue. Like I said, I mean, we could delve into the differences, but I think it's a question of how heavily propagandized are you, and that's really all I wanted to say about that. Like I said, I think I will go through John Michael Greer's book, The Long Descent, again, and pick out different excerpts from the book. Excuse me, and kind of pick them apart because I don't believe every single word, and I think to a point he kind of sounds um, somewhat World Economic Forum esque in some ways with climate change. Like I say, but I think that he changes. I imagine his views on writing because I know I uploaded a clip. I think either on this channel or Uncle Thomas too of him speaking positively about Trump. But that's like I say, take it for what it is. I mean, I know John Michael Greer is somebody that's brought up quite a bit and has been talked about quite a bit in far right spheres. But of course, like I say, I think that he a little smarter than them. He doesn't go on and on about race. He doesn't mention race, which I think is very smart. But I try to take him with a grain of salt because he is a Freemason. He is a Druid. Like I say, I've reversed my views on paganism somewhat because I think it's important to realize that, you know, the world is going to become a much smaller place. And there's this idea that, you know, we can all get along or, oh, we can travel the world. But once oil does peak, and like I said, I think this to a point, I'm somewhat with John Michael Greer where it's just going to become smaller societies. And I think that, being a machinist will be very valuable. People that are able to recycle metals will be very welcome. And I think people that can recycle these things and can make it work and just creating societies. Now, of course, like I say, he's very much against this sort of survivalist sort of mentality and, the sort of let's, run for the hills sort of folks. He's very much like, somewhat of a, like cities are stronger and whatnot, which is somewhat reversed, but I think he makes a good case. Now, you can disagree and say, oh, that's bullshit. That's fine. But I think that he makes you question the sort of typical narratives of like the survivalist who just wants it all to burn down versus the people that are, that are purely about progress, that we have to progress further, that science is going to solve everything, or, liberalism will save everything. And that I agree that it's like, no, I'm going to be very careful. There's a third position on this view. Now, of course, like I said, then you can go into the neoliberal. It's called the third way, but, basically, like I said, typical schizo video here, but I'm about a little over halfway through The Long Descent, and maybe I'll find some quotes. I'll do like critiquing quotes of The Long Descent by John Michael Greer, something like that. I'll see how it goes, and kind of get back to you on that. But I figure I would do that. Kind of tumultuous with the job situation, but I feel that now I've kind of stabilized and I've found a better job doing apartment maintenance. So, anyway, but that's personal stuff, and we're not really going to go all that far into it. But hopefully, y'all enjoyed that and got something out of it and kind of understood it. I talked very briefly kind of about the actual title, but it's a lot of stuff bouncing around in my head, so I figure I would bring it out. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it. So, see you later. Goodbye.